look out my window, many sights to see. When I look in my window, so many different people to be, that it's strange, so strange. You got to pick up every stitch. You got to pick up every stitch. You got to pick up every stitch. Must be the season of the witch. Must be the season of the witch. Oh, must be the season of the witch.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Team Yume podcast, starring me, and no one else. It's just going to be me, talking for an hour, with myself.
I'm no one in the end. I'm just no one. I'm
Oh,
basically a
what's
ghost
this?
now.
What's this? A voice that sounds very familiar, but I have not heard in a long time. Who could it be? Who's that Pokemon? It's WhyBoy! Yay!
Hello. I am back from school and everything else that I was doing and all that. Finally
Yes.
free.
Well, now all you have left is the student debt.
Yeah.
Finally free!
You're gonna have to get that quickly sorted out as fast as possible.
Oh boy.
I
Right,
know.
so Mr. The Graduate here has graduated from university. What's your
Actually,
major?
college. I did video production at my college. Just basically just to have like some sort of connections in the industry and such.
Well,
And,
that's
I
the
got-
only reason one goes to college, really.
Yeah.
It doesn't
'Cause
teach
I already-
you any real-life skills, so...
Yeah, it definitely was a little bit all over the place in school. We had some useful classes and some really not useful classes. Like we had a web development course,
Oh, that's nice. It's not like you
Yeah.
knew that already.
and it's not like there could have been many other like video editing skills that I could have learned instead.
Most of what university or college can teach you, you can learn it on your own.
Oh, definitely.
But the only advantage it would give you, aside from learning the value of money, is to get connections with whatever industry your university is attached to. My university really did not help me in that regard. But hey, now I know all about Pier Paolo Pasolini and his filmography, so I can tell you about it. Not...
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Anyway, it's been so long, we have a lot to catch up, as it were, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about media, recent media explorations, bonanzas, and everything in between. You go first.
More recently, I've just been watching a lot more animated shows and anime recently with Nero. Just basically just get ourselves like very connected in the industry and such. I've been trying to like get into book writing and all that. One of the ones that we just recently got into is the new Disney show Amphibia.
Ah, yes, we will talk about Amphibia. I've been watching it as well. But before talking about Amphibia, let's talk about a show on Disney Channel that has recently ended. A certain show that you might have heard about, Star versus the Forces of Evil. You know,
Yep.
that one.
Yeah, that was a huge one, a huge finale.
Yes.
For so many.
That one. Funnily enough, it ended in the same week as Game of Thrones, I believe, which I find thematically appropriate because both finales really had similar elements to them. Both did away with the oppressing symbols of the status quo in order to give the future a chance, and both were extremely botched in many regards. Oh boy, were they botched.
Well, I can't say anything to Game of Thrones, as I haven't really watched Game of Thrones, but definitely the finale of Star Versus.
Yes.
The finale of Star Versus was, for me, it seemed simplistic in a sense. It wasn't something that I really disliked.
It's a matter of everyone and everything being at the right place by the end of it, but the journey getting to it feels flawed and rushed. Mostly because, from a writing standpoint, it was pretty much rushed. And
Right.
this harkens back to the entire run of the show, which I have discussed or rather written about at length. Basically, it's a show that wants to tackle grievous social and political issues related to modern-day times, such as racism, classism, police brutality, white nationalism, which was the ultimate villain of the show altogether, and yet it still wants to have its teenage romance in it and take half of the entire length of the entire digesis with the most telegraphed and frankly embarrassing game of will they, won't they I've seen in such a long time, since Inuyasha. I am tempted to say, boy, oh boy.
Yeah. Oh, Star Versus, I have enjoyed, like, it's talks about, like, things of racism and such. With, like, Star facing up against all the prejudice from the humans against the monsters and such, like, it started to, like, get, like, much stronger as the series went on. Because at the beginning, it was just basically simple fare being like, it's a parody of just the anime girl genre. It's just as simple as that. Just anime girl blasting around and just silly fun. And then it actually tried to go into, then it just started to go into deeper and deeper themes. And also at the same time, like you said, it tried to attach the whole, like, will they, won't they to it. One of the things that I didn't really want out of Star Versus, it's such a played out sort of, like, trope in writing, where it's just like the best friends will get together in the end because they understand each other the most.
I am not even inherently opposed at the idea, believe it or not. I realize I have the perspective to realize that this show was not made for my demographic, but at the same time, it's a bit of a moot argument if your show still wants to openly tackle racism, white nationalism, racial persecution, and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
It wants its cake and wants to eat it too. And it cannot accomplish that if the focus is not there. This show has lacked focus for 3 whole seasons. The only season who was actually laser focused to get a story going was the final one. And that's because it was the final one and they had a lot of ties to not.
Yeah, like, I was just watching the series off and on a lot because it did have that sort of issue where it's just like you have a serialized element, then you just have episodic episodes that just Star and Marco just screwing about somewhere. It created such a disconnect between the actual story elements that it became hard to really care about it until the last season, where the story elements actually connected episode by episode into an actual serialized format.
Yes, but it still came up short by the ending. The ending was meant to feel grandiose in terms of theming and resolution, but it felt dramatically and narratively rushed, mostly because it was.
Right.
No matter how focused the last season was, it couldn't still resolve all the inherent issues that had been built up for 3 seasons prior to the ending. And that's a problem. I still cannot believe how much screen time has been given to Ludo, the single most useless character I've ever seen in a show like this.
Ludo was just good for like beginning sort of arc when every other villain that shown up after him was always vastly more interesting and actually layered. But Ludo was
Yes,
just basically a little brat.
but they kept it around. They kept him around, and that pretty much is a microcosm of the most problematic issues with the show. Like I said, lack of focus and also terrible, terrible pacing. The goofy slice of life episodes clash openly with the more serious episodes having an ongoing narrative interspersed in between the other kind of episodes. Like I said, they clash against each other, they undermine each other's presence. It's a similar problem with DuckTales, in that certain episodes with a more light, goofy tone should not happen in between more serious, darker episodes that are moving a plot along. That's something that I have always despised about modern cartoons. They do this all the time. Steven Universe does that to nauseum. DuckTales did that. Star Versus is the primeval force of that trend.
Yeah. I'll just say for just my own personal taste and also like Nero's as well, like we both find that DuckTales does it way worse. Like we've pissed off some fans with this, but we do not like the current DuckTales.
I don't like it as well. I stopped watching it after the first season. I thought, you know what? This season finale was fun and everything because Magica was fun.
Yeah.
They completely mangled the theming of the entire season. I don't need a second season. I don't enjoy this show, so I don't need to watch and keep watching a show that I don't enjoy. Star Versus had elements, things that kept me coming back to see if they would eventually be solved, and usually left me in frustration when they wouldn't because of the umpteenth goofy will they, won't they episode involving Star and Marco, or maybe Marco has a new girlfriend. He had 5 of those, I think. And the worst part about that specific romance is that the story is not even about that. It does not center around that at all. It's something that's happening entirely on the side and really should not matter in the face of magic Nazis taking over Mumerica. You know what I'm saying?
I totally get what you're saying. I sort of understand where the writing is going, because it's basically a story almost about Star trying to balance all this sort of stuff, trying to balance the monsters.
Yes,
and
Marco has nothing to do with any of this.
Really doesn't. He just got wrapped up in the whole scenario. Like, Tom would be a much more better parallel for that.
I was rooting for Tom and Marco, if I'm being honest. They have much better chemistry than Marco and Star. And Star and Tom. I hate it when they do that. I hate it when a Disney show teases me with a perfectly good queer couple that actually organically makes sense, but they still go with the heteronormative couple because it's Disney, we gotta do heteros. I am not bitter about Tangled in the slightest. Tangled is a great show, by the way. It's everything Star Versus should have been, and so much more. I recommend it.
I have to go back and see that. I've just been watching like some of the musical numbers from that series. I wish there was like more musicals in like TV shows and such. But the only
They
ones
are
that
usually
I really know,
bad in TV shows, though.
yeah. But the ones that I've seen in Tangled are just like, wow, this is really well done. Like some of the staging is a little bit flat because it is TV still.
Well, there are a couple of 45 minutes specials that have much better budget, so the songs come off with a better staging to them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yes, it's good.
Yeah.
But anyway, Star Versus is over, done and dusted. It had a very unsatisfying resolution because it felt rushed from a writing standpoint. And the ending was all kinds of bollocks, but that's personal taste. I'll leave it at that. It did not even feel like a conclusion, but it was.
Yeah.
Regardless, that show is over, and immediately we have the next show that came to replace it, which is, as we mentioned before, Amphibia.
Yeah.
What do you think
Which,
about that?
well, it's definitely filling in the place where Star Versus is, because it definitely has like that overarching story with Anne being stuck in this basically frog world and such due to a magical box, and that's going to be leading to all sorts of freaking serialized elements. But until then, we have all these episodic stuff, which is Anne and the Frog family just doing shenanigans.
It's fine
And
for
so-
a first season to be nothing but shenanigans. It's a good way
Yeah.
to introduce the characters and situations with which the audience will be familiar eventually. All great tools to properly expand on the characters and get them well rounded before tragedy strikes.
Yeah.
It did not waste any time in establishing recurring themes or leitmotifs from the very start. Immediately, there is an issue regarding peer pressure and potentially depression, anxiety. I expect racism at some point, all of which have been heavily hinted from pretty much the start of it. But for now, we are just witnessing the first batch of episodes, which are mostly light-hearted comedy.
Yeah, and I've been enjoying that. Like, the writing is definitely very punchy at times. And sometimes it can just go, like, over the top in just, like, really funny ways. Like, if I can just
Yes.
spoil this, one of my favorite jokes is, like, during one scene where Hop, Pop, and Ann get totally, like, stoned out on just their own juices and all that, and they pass out. And then
Please
Paul...
take this sentence out of context, I beg of you.
that's exactly what I'm doing, just so you have to see the episode. And then you have Polly, little tadpole daughter, being like, oh, guess I gotta drag them inside. So she takes a swig of their juice, and then she starts tripping balls, and just like a giant rock golem just appears out of nowhere. It's just funny and weird.
Yes, it is. The comedy is well timed. I think Anne is a very charismatic lead, and a slightly different lead from what we are used to in a modern cartoon. I think the creator of the show based this character from his Nana, specifically the wild hairstyle. So Anne is a very dynamic protagonist in that sense, and she is not a princess, which is always a plus in that regard. Judging from what the show has, well, shown to us, she might not even be a child of privilege. There was this one scene in the second episode that showed her stealing the MacGuffin box from a store, mostly because of peer pressure, and that is going to be an entire thematic and narrative journey at some point. So the premise of the show, and perhaps we should have led with that, in case you are not familiar, because we've been saying frogs, tadpoles, tripping balls, none of which had any context. The premise is actually a very classic, fairly known trope in children's media. The kid that travels to another world
Yeah.
and has adventures there. We've seen it 1.5 million times. So many times, in fact, that you would have to really propose something different from this latest iteration in order to grab people's attention. I've got to say, Frog People is one way of doing it. So yes, as soon as the box she stole opens up, she and her 2 friends are transported into this frog dimension. She finds herself all alone, and she's found by these frog people from this random village, surrounded by magical mountains, and we don't know the whereabouts of the other 2. So that will be interesting going forward to discover exactly what occurred to them. We technically know what happened to one of them, but the other is a mystery.
Yeah.
So it's full of potential, is all I can say about it, since it's just begun, as this is being recorded.
Yeah. And I'm enjoying it so far, and I'm looking forward to see where it goes from here. Really nice so far. Anne and Sprig are just a wonderful duo. The writing is just definitely on point.
Honestly, the best character has to be Hop Pop, mostly because the prospect of Chief Wiggum voicing a frog granddad is funny on so many layers.
Oh yeah.
That's definitely Chief Wiggum's voice coming out of the frog. From what we've seen, it seems really good and funny, and I would recommend checking it out. Hopefully, it will not go the way of Star Versus. They've learned their lesson, and they will not mangle it
Yeah.
at some point. Good call! It was an extremely good call not to give Anne a love interest right from the beginning. I applaud you on that. That's very progressive, Disney. Thank you.
Yeah. She's gonna get in with a frog.
I mean, it would be different.
Yeah.
It would be interesting because of that, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. And it would be weird also.
Yeah.
I mean, Sprig
definitely.
is basically like her baby brother. That's the
Yeah.
dynamic they have. It would be so weird.
It definitely would.
On the other hand, Hop Up,
Yeah, it would just be weird in the other direction.
the frogs and Anne have a fantastic chemistry. Not just Sprig and Anne, but also Anne and Hop Up and Sprig, Sprig and the Tadpole sister, so on and so forth. We are just waiting now for the other inhabitants of the valley to get a bit of screen time and development. Already I like that old lady with
Yeah.
the spider pet.
Yeah, the spider pet was really cute, and just the lady was just nice and crazy.
Yes, nice and crazy. Anne says she wants to grow up to be her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's Amphibia. Not much to say at this moment, but a lot of promises that hopefully will not get unfulfilled. Starverse! Huh.
Yeah, especially with Disney TV animation, they feel more willing to try to at least do new things. So I am looking forward to where Amphibia is going to go from here.
I like that. I like that Disney Channel has more female leads in direct opposition to Cartoon Network having more boys main characters. Although in Cartoon Network's defense, they are basically taking their boy main characters to a completely different direction from the mid-2000s, so to speak. They are much more compelling characters. I love Craig of the Creek. I love Weber Bears, it's the cutest, and so on and so forth. Oh, speaking of Cartoon Network, I think Infinity Train is finally going to happen.
Yeah, just a little bit later this year, I believe.
About time!
Yeah, they're working hard on it. They changed up the art style a little bit, but it's looking good. The writing for the actual story still seems like basically a lot like Gravity Falls in a sense.
I am not
Weird, but
opposed to
also
that.
story-driven.
Gravity Falls was lightning in a bottle for Disney Channel especially.
If they can capture that again with Infinity Train, it's just going to be another big hit.
Mm-hmm. Although I would prefer for it to be good on its own terms, instead of being good by relation to a show that already happened. And this segues neatly to the premiere of Villainous.
Oh, yes.
Villainous. Oh, I've been waiting for this one. You have no idea. Ever since I saw those shorts that have been circling around a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
I've been looking forward for this to become a proper show. It seems it's finally happening, and my gosh, that first episode comes out swinging like a maniac. Let me tell you.
It was extremely solid. Like, me and Nero just watched it, and just watching it basically made me feel like, what? It's just like, it's a good version of that old show, League of Super Evil.
Or Evil con Carne.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't like Evil con Carne. I'm sorry.
I was fine with League of Super Evil myself. That was just one of the shows I watched as a little kid, as growing up in Canada. Because that was really the alternative for if you want to have an evil villain as a main character.
Given how this show is being framed, I don't think Black Hat can really count as a main character. He's technically the main character, the villainous of the title, but he's going to be more of a main character in the same sense that Captain Harlock is a main character in his own show, which is to say, we only experience the character through the eyes of the people around him, a la John Watson, because it's the kind of protagonist that's maintained entirely by an aura of mystique and terror in this case. If you give him too much screen time and development, it loses the mystique and it becomes just another show about a villain that becomes a good guy. We've seen so many of those already. If I wanted that, I would watch Megamind again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It just seems more fun just have a bunch of villains just doing villainous stuff.
I think the more interesting characters the show will inevitably focus on are the henchmen, specifically the nerd scientist with a paper bag on his head, and the Markiplier bear. I still cannot believe it. That's Markiplier's voice coming out of the bear.
Yeah, just like Markiplier's just voice along with him going, "Ooh."
Yes, that's his character.
Yeah.
In this major Cartoon Network series. That's insane, but okay. He's technically one of the good ones, so I'm fine with that. I would not be fine if this were to be the Logan Paul bear, obviously, but it's not. I'm especially smitten by evil Frankie over there. I mean, I think she's pretty much the Harley Quinn to Black Cat's Joker, except that Black Cat is not into that in the slightest.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Like, I'm just trying to think, like, how many episodes were slated for Villainous? Because I was trying to find that, being like, okay, how many episodes are going to be out now?
I've seen only the first episode. I did not come across any other ones, but I am looking forward to them.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully they basically just come out with more episodes.
I like the voice of Black Cat in this. I like how unique that voice is. It's unlike any other performance I've seen in the animation industry so far. I am too used in hearing the same 10, 20 voice actors over and over again. Tara Strong needs to be stopped. She's in too many roles. I think she has 5 roles in My Little Superhero Girls.
Yeah. I only saw like brief clips of that, and I can definitely hear her voice throughout it.
I don't like her Harley Quinn in the slightest. It's bad. It's annoying and high-pitched and makes my ears bleed. Most of the roles she gets cast for, it's just her Twilight Sparkle voice.
Yeah.
And after seeing that show for so many years, I had that specific intonation, inclination, that whole performance. I had the memory of that burned into my membrane. So yes, I cannot unhear Twilight Sparkle whenever Tara Strong does her typical voice. I know she has range, but she always gets typecast as the dorky girl that talks like this. And again, once you hear enough voice actors and you recognize their voices, the magic is gone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like harder for her because at the end of the day, this is her job. So she'll definitely take any job that's being like, oh, just do the voice that I'm basically famous for. Okay. I just blame just the position that she gets for not really like showing her range.
In fairness, her Jimmy's voice was getting real grating in Fairly Odd Parents.
Oh, yeah.
Also, she cannot be Bubbles anymore because, well, that ship has sailed and was hit by an iceberg and sunk into the bottom of the ocean and then exploded because there was a subterranean volcano, and then the little pieces of woods flew right up into the moon and the moon blew up as well. Basically what I'm saying is that the Powerpuff Girls 2016 reboot is one of the biggest failures I've ever seen in this industry, specifically in regards to Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney Channel, the big three.
Right.
It's still going, so they must be doing something right. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely not gaining new audience members. They're just holding on to the old ones.
Right. Anyway, hey, speaking of unsatisfying experiences, have you seen the new season of Aggretsuko?
Actually, me and Nero are just watching it. Like, we're halfway through the season right now.
Oh, well, in that case, I shall take this little tidbit, this little, shall we say, tangent over here, place it in my pocket, and wait for the next time we do podcast together to properly discuss about my feelings and your feelings eventually about the new season of Aggretsuko. The short version of it is that I did not like it at all. And there are very specific reasons for it, and I think you will understand why when you finish it.
Because I'm also just trying to understand sort of the theming of the season, and it definitely feels it's going in a different direction than what the first season was doing.
Well, the problem with the first season, if you can call it a problem, is that it wasn't really going for a theming so much as it was taking the already existing 100 plus flash animated shorts about aggressive Retsuko that already existed and essentially amalgamate them into a 13 episodes long series. That was season 1 in a nutshell.
I don't really know about that. I think there is a pretty strong theming. It's basically a theming of almost tunnel vision in our lives. Because Aggretsuko throughout the whole beginning is basically just tunnel vision, just focusing on her own issues and such, feeling like she has it the worst of all. So she had to let out her rage doing the karaoke. But then as the series goes on, she starts to see the other side of her friends and such, and sees all the problems that they had to deal with and how it connects to her, and she starts to expand her world. So by the end of the season, she starts to expand a bit more and just tries to step forward into the actual adult world, where season 2 starts up, and now she's dealing with characters that basically are facing with the adult world in different ways. Just right now, Retsuko is dealing with characters that are basically not dealing with the adult world in like very healthy ways. And she has to figure out like react like that or what's the proper way to react like that to try to grow up as an actual adult. She feels like I'm getting older in age, so I have to figure out how I want to grow up as a person now. Where I have my mother breathing it out of my neck to try to marry me off, where I have like jerk co-workers making my life miserable, and just so on and so forth.
One of my greatest gripes about season 2 has to do specifically with that co-worker. Specifically how his behavior was framed, handled, and even excused. But coming back to what was I saying about season 1, let me rephrase it. Season 1 is good, thematically, because it already had a bunch of existing material to base itself from. Right? All they did was took what already existed and expand upon it to make it a more wholesome, focused first season. And it had its problems too, mostly because those last few episodes about the space cadet boyfriend really felt oddly placed, especially after she had her showdown with her boss, which was really the main thrust of the narrative in that first season. But like I said, it's like that because it's following the order of the original 100 short flash animations that were made before this became a Netflix show. Season 2 tries to figuratively fly off with its own wings, not depending on anything that already existed. I think it's thematically more focused than Season 1. Unfortunately, the way they handled certain characters or certain situations, I find it personally gross or even bewilderingly out of place. And once you get to the second part of the season, I think you will find yourself scratching your head quite a few times. You've seen that donkey guy, right?
Yeah, he's just been introduced, and I can already have an inkling of where the season's going to go from here.
That's not the bewildering aspect I'm talking about. It has to do with him, though. So you will see. You will see. Oh boy. So new shows have begun, new shows have been announced, old shows have ended recently, and there is one show in particular, one animated series that has ended recently, and nobody really noticed or cared for it, which is sad, but I understand why that was the case. I am talking about Mighty Magiswords.
Yeah.
So you might remember my original rant about this show, which was specifically about Season 1. I liked the premise and comedic timing of the show when it was just presented in the format of 3 minutes long episodes on the CN app.
Mm-hmm.
Those wild, bombastic, absurdist bits of cartoon, over-the-top comedy were well-timed for a show that was meant to have 3 minutes long episodes. The problem arose when this became a full-fledged series for the Cartoon Network channel, and they took those 3 minutes long episodes and stretched them out to be 10 minutes long, and they were badly edited. Nothing really worked. The jokes were there, but the show did not have a sense of timing and delivery, and everything fell flat because of that. I liked the art style, the art direction of the show, which was very different from the neo-rubber hose style that every other show on Cartoon Network is showing these days. Kyle A. Carrozza, the creator of the show, as some obvious Ren and Stimpy inspirations in his own artistic endeavor. Sadly, that first season was absolutely ruined by the way it was edited.
Yeah. And I just seen Magiswords just sort of floating around all this time. I didn't even know that they got cancelled.
Yes, but that was Season 1. If you were to ignore Season 1 and just get to Season 2, they tweaked the editing, the way it was put together, just that little much, and the show is suddenly brilliant. I'm not even joking. The jokes have proper setups and punchlines, they are perfectly timed. It's an over-the-top, old-school cartoon comedy from the 90s, essentially. And it's really funny. That's what Season 1 could have been, but instead, we had to wait for Season 2 to get the good version of what this show could be. And I would recommend you to marathon the entire Season 2. It feels like watching Animaniacs or Tiny Toons Adventures when we were children in the 90s. Unfortunately, the editing is still not perfect. They fixed the timing, but there are a lot of edits and the overall presentation of the show that have not been resolved. It looks cheap, unfortunately. And it's not cheap, because all the characters have so many unbridled motions and movements. They have the best face game I've seen this side of OKKO. You could screen capture any given moment in that show, and it would be worthy of being framed in your library. They did such a great job with Season 2. The comedic writing is spot on, the characters are all funny, again because of the small modifications that they did, which made the show 100 times better. And the Mighty Magiswords themselves turned out to be great for prop-based comedy. They unleashed their creativity with those silly tools in ways that Season 1 did not allow you to enjoy because, again, of all the issues we just described. And the season finale was very much in tone with what the entire show has been about. A wild, nonsensical ride that also featured a random cameo from OKKO.
Yeah.
And it only realizes it's the season finale literally in the last 5 seconds. One of my favorite moments in this show, and it's a moment I will quote until the end of time, because it makes me just holler in hilarity whenever I see it or hear it. It's the delivery horse. The delivery horse with this voice like so that wants his broccoli. Where's my broccoli, Norman? Special delivery for the warriors. Yeah. Clearly evil horse. I love him. It's the best. So again, go watch Mighty Magiswords Season 2. I promise you, it's so much better than Season 1. It's what the entire show should have been, and it's a love letter to the 90s and to cartoons in general, really. It has recently ended, sadly, and I want to salute you. This eulogy is for you. You were never meant to be a runaway hit. You were never meant to be the next OKKO, obviously.
Yeah.
But you were funny. You were just what I needed to remind myself of what cartoons looked like in the 90s. Or rather, what some cartoons looked like in the 90s. It was a fun, nostalgic trip in that sense.
Yeah.
So yes. Listen, I am not even joking, this show had the potential to be the next SpongeBob. As in early seasons of SpongeBob. But you were a fun ride in the end. The road was bumpy at first, but it was smooth sailing at some point. Unfortunately, by that point, the proof of concept had already fallen to the side. The rent was due. You did not have the money to pay for the apartment, so you were thrown out. Alas.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Mighty Magiswords.
I'll have to get season 2 then a try, because I tried to get into season 1 at times when I saw it on TV. It's just like, no.
It's the difference between night and day. It's ridiculous how much better the second season is.
Then maybe I'll just skip season 1 entirely and just go to season 2.
I recommend you to do that. There isn't really much in terms of a continuity in this show anyway, which is rare for today's cartoons, but also refreshing.
Oh, definitely.
I recommend to watch the original shorts on the app, and then just take a flight right into season 2. So that you can actually get some of the ongoing jokes that have been introduced since the beginning, such as that all recurring gag with the evil twin, with Prohias' evil twin, which is the most cheap-looking character model imaginable, and that's the joke. Speaking of the creator of Mighty Magiswords, you know, I discovered that Kyle A. Carrozza used to have a webcomic. Your silence speak more than 1,000 words.
Well, you were saying, I noticed you found a webcomic.
I was waiting for your reaction, because was it going to be stupor or curiosity? Go on.
Well, you can't really hear intrigue because I'm just staring in silence to be like, okay, let me just wait to hear what he said.
Okay. There is a surprising amount of webcomic artists that eventually started to work for the animation industry. For example, the creator of OKKO, which is arguably Cartoon Network's new biggest IP, originally had his own webcomic, titled RPG World, I think.
Okay.
Which famously ended just as the main characters were about to fight the final boss, to troll the fans.
Oh, God.
And also, more famously, an episode in OKKO actually served as an unofficial ending to that webcomic. Several layers of meta text here.
Oh, that's funny.
And then there's the creator of RPG, that also works in animation and recently made a pilot of RPG for the Nickelodeon pilot program. Which is to say, they don't get to pilot the EVA. I'm talking about animated shorts serving as pilots for potential series. That sounded more funny in my head. Anyway, so Kyle A. Carrozza, turns out, also had his own webcomic. And it's titled Frog, Raccoon, Strawberry. The entire comic, from what I've seen, is pretty much one gigantic non sequitur, followed by the next.
It sounds like it, with a name like that.
I am not even sure what it's about. I guess there is this character whom is a raccoon, but she thinks she's a frog, and she wears a frog costume, and that gives her non-specific frog powers. And she does superhero things with it, except she really does not. And then there are sidekicks and side characters and situations that make no sense. And they have no traditional setups or punchlines. Most of it feels like anti-humor, except it's too wacky to be considered anti-humor. In this comic, his Ren and Stimpy influences seem much more evident than in Mighty Magiswords. He used this platform to improve his face game, so to speak. There isn't a single panel that does not feature a ridiculous character's expression, as in both facial and physical expression.
Okay.
I would recommend to at least give it a look as a curiosity, except that the site it's on, Damn Comics, is absolute garbage. It takes millennia to load a single page. You don't need to be an expert in graphic design or website design to notice that this particular site looks very old and dated. Honestly, that particular style of zany cartoon comedy feels more and more like a lost art in today's climate, when most cartoon shows, while being funny, also are not Looney Tunes funny.
Yeah.
If you get what I'm saying. They are not loony and cartoony, which is fine, really. I think that We Bear Bears is one of the best shows that we have today. It's such a delight. And I guess we do have OKKO to cover the Glenn Kennedy meets anime bizarro world that we apparently did not know we wanted to see. OKKO is such a bizarre show if you really think about it, but that's really what makes it grand.
It's entirely insane.
There is a method to the insanity, and between OKKO and Mighty Magiswords, those two shows had some of the greatest facial expressions in animation's history.
Like, I have to go back to rewatch some of the episodes, because I sort of fell out of it when I was just rewatching a whole bunch of other different shows.
You know what we should do? Here's an idea for future podcasting experience, if you will. Trademark. We should record ourselves watching and reacting to episodes of Mighty Magiswords Season 2 to celebrate its run and eulogize its untimely demise. What do you think of that? It's not going to be a reaction video, mostly because YouTube would obliterate me. We're going to simply record ourselves as we watch them, but there is not going to be video or audio from said show. It's going to be one of those watch and listen along.
Yeah, we can try that, sure. Yeah. Did you not expect me just to say sure?
I believe this is all for this week's podcast. Unless you have a surprise topic to spring on me.
I've watched a few different shows. Like, I was watching some anime. Been watching
anime?
Part 4 and 5 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I tried to watch the first season.
Yeah.
I could not get past the first 5 episodes because it bored me to tears. Ever since then, I stayed far away from it. Maybe I should watch one of the other parts and just ignore the first one, but I never get around to it because it seems like such a daunting, media-consuming experience.
Well, for me, and just from the advice that I've gotten, it's basically, if you get through the first arc, you basically can enjoy all the other arcs so much more better. Like, it gets so much more fun once you hit the second part. As soon as it gets, like, part 3 and such, if you know who the main bad guy, Dio, is, then you should be fine.
Who could not know who Dio is after his first introduction in the first episode, where he kicks a dog, kisses JoJo's girlfriend, and then burns the same dog?
Yeah.
What a grade A douchebag!
Yes, that's Dio.
Ha! It was me, Dio!
Yeah, definitely part 1 is very hard to get through. It gets a lot more fun as you keep on going.
It doesn't really appeal to me in any way whatsoever.
Of course, not everything's going to appeal to everybody. Watch this first season, and then you can enjoy the rest of it.
Or I could skip directly to the second one, maybe read up what happened in the first one, but I don't need to because I know Dio comes back every time, and there is a new JoJo who fights him. I think that's all I need to know, really. Oh, and I guess from part 3 onwards, we have stands. And I have a general understanding of how stands work, because I've seen the same concept done ad nauseum by literally everything else, including Persona.
Right.
Right, okay.
From what I know of stands, like, I can see comparison to Persona, but I'm not sure what else you can compare, like, psychic punching powers to.
Well, you know how basically every stand corresponds to a specific power? That's the same basis from My Hero Academia, where everyone is born with a unique power based off a random word, essentially.
Right.
It's basically the same, except they don't have literal personifications of that power manifesting from their backs, which would be creepy.
Yeah. So in that sort of comparison, like, just power sets in any sort of, like, show would be comparable to stands then. Like,
Yes.
if I just went back to Power Stones and all that, everyone has the same power.
Yes! That's exactly what I'm saying. So even though you don't have literal personifications of the power that you have standing from your back, there are millions of examples of this very specific premise, done slightly different. From your Power Stone to your Shaman King, Shaman King is a lot more similar to JoJo, come to think of it. To your One Piece, and everybody has a different devil power, right? To My Hero Academia.
What if you just compare it all like that and just say, like, they're all basically the same? And it's just sort of ignoring all their differences.
I'm not saying they are the same. I am saying that they have similarities, and they all essentially come from the same place, really. Like the root of all religions, if you will.
Yeah, it's a similar writing trope. Like, for power sets, you can't really ignore that trope. If everyone had the same power, it'd be boring.
Again, like I said, I've seen it a million times. Maybe I just don't have a stomach for battle shonen anymore. I've even fallen off My Hero Academia entirely.
Yeah.
I just don't care about it anymore. So this was a fun tangent to have right at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Yes, indubitably. Oh, video games. Let's talk video games. Why not? Let's have a video game section.
But I haven't played any video games.
Well, I have. I've been playing Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night. It's fun.
Say sure. Because I don't know what that game is.
And that was our video game corner. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, it's time for plugs. Plugs. You got plugs, we got plugs. Plugs for days, plugs for miles. WhyBoy, you go first.
It's for Toongreen. It's basically, we are, like, revamping the whole channel and site altogether. Like, we've been shipping up reviews, we've been trying to make new content, and we've been writing books and such. Like, we just
You've been writing books?
Yep.
The nerve.
We finished a children's book, actually. And we're looking into publishing it.
Oh, I have a children's book right here. He put his fingy into my you-know-what, and we did it for the first time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, just keep up to date on Toongrin on our social media. That's all just like Toongrin and all that. You'll be able to simply look us up if you just Google that. And we'll be coming out with newer content soon. Probably a new series coming out at the end of the month. And new content corners and new reviews. Well, just with YouTube and all, like we just have to decide being like, okay, we gotta do something else. This is not working for us.
It's not working for almost everybody.
Yeah.
That's why my YouTube has become merely a hobby at this point. Right then, plugs. My plugs. You can follow me at Adriano Bordoni1 on Twitter. Just look up my nickname, Madhog Die Master, on Twitter, or Google me. Although if you do that, you will most likely run across my old fanfiction.net account. I wouldn't exactly recommend you to check that one out. But then again, we've been reading my old fanfictions on my Dramatis Lectio show, so there you go. Speaking of which, we just recently concluded our 3 years in the making reading and dissection of my magnum opus, the Tales Saga, which you can read on fanfiction.net, but I would rather that you listen to it on my YouTube channel, the same channel you are most likely watching or listening to right now, which is again Madhog Die Master. Subscribe, like and share, click the notification bell and whatnot. Just enjoy the ride and what I might be able to offer you. So go back and listen to the I want to say 80 plus hours of our Tales reading. It's a huge commitment, but it's worth it because we had so much fun with it. It's so bad. It's actually good, but it's still bad. And for anything else, I have a lot of opinions about video games and cartoons and films, and you can all read them on my Twitter, which I already plugged. So, moving on. I have a Patreon. I don't know if I should plug it, it's virtually useless, but I do have a Patreon. The link thereof is in the doobly-doo. The description, that is. And that should be it. Thanks for joining us, everybody. This has been the revamped Team Yume podcast. I'll be seeing you in 8 months from now, at this rate.
And I've been WhyBoy.
He's been the boy of many wonders. Actually, you are graduated now, so you are more Why-man than WhyBoy.
Yeah. I'm still a boy now. Just have to make it to man someday. Just on the beginning of my journey through life.
How old are you again?
26.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah,
good night, everybody.
Yeah, see ya.
Where's my broccoli, Norman?